Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another exciting month of learning and growth at Improving. We are settling into a new month. We're thrilled to kick things off with an incredible talk by my good friend Blake McMillan, a leader here in training and learning. This month's theme is all about training and learning, something that's very near and dear to our hearts here at Improving. Over the years, we have been pioneers in shaping effective learning experiences that have helped professionals across industries thrive. And it is exactly this expertise that brought Blake to the stage today to share his insights on the future of career learning. If you're excited about diving deeper into this topic and exploring more of what Improving has to offer, make sure to check out our full lineup of webinars for this month by visiting improving.com/thoughts/webinars. And if you haven't yet, don't miss our previous talks on recruiting and career development, which was last month. And those were really, really good. You can check those out on our Improving page or on our YouTube channel. All right, so if you're here, grab your coffee, settle in, and get ready for a talk that is sure to inspire. Let's dive into Blake McMillan on the future of career learning, the current state, a conversation we're all going to love. Go ahead, Blake.
Awesome. Well, first off, I got to give some props. Thank Daniel for producing. So Daniel's one of our very talented developers here at Improving. And this is something that he does as a way of kind of giving back to the community. It's part of our involvement thing where that's part of who we are. And so thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you signing up for this. And let's get into it. I'll show you this stuff about me. I'm not going to spend too much time here, though. I teach a variety of classes that Scrum.org offers. I have a website, soloscrum.com. You can see some of the companies that I've supported down there below. If you're watching on YouTube, you can pause it if you want to spend some time on this, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I got other stuff I want to talk about. I want to first share, here's the big three things, right? These are the big three things that we're going to try to do in this time together. First, just talk about the current state of like what does learning look like these days? I'm going to share some metrics with you. We'll kind of go over what that looks like. Then we'll talk about the different learning modalities and the challenges that people face using those, how training relates to career growth, and also like becoming more competitive as an organization. So in that section, that's where we'll kind of talk about like, training for the individual, training for the organization. Why does it matter? Why should you care about it? So those are our learning objectives. So let's get into the first one. So the first one is me just telling you a little bit about like what training has looked like over the past few years. And so what you can see is, and right now I'm just sharing Improving's public class data. I'm not sharing our private class data. This is only public classes. And what you can see is in 2017, 2018, 2019, it just looks like a world full of endless growth. And then 2020 happened. Yeah, that's what that big dip is in the middle. That's 2020. Now, the interesting part is that 2017, 2018, and 2019, it was all in-person classes because that's the only way that we delivered the public training for Scrum.org is through in-person classes because that's the only thing that was allowed. And then in 2020, an exception was made, go figure. It was like, okay, we can start delivering live virtual classes. And so that became an option. And that's really kind of, I think, what saved training in 2020 is that we were able to adapt and learn how to deliver this thing, these experiences virtually. And the other interesting thing that happened too is once we moved into that virtual delivery, what it opened up was it opened up us being able to deliver some of the classes that are more advanced classes, because generally what you see with 2017 through 2019, that is professional Scrum Master, professional Scrum Product Owner, and maybe just a handful, and I mean a handful, like maybe 1 to 5 classes of any other type. But what we saw a ton of was the PSM and PSPO. Just so you know, that's still the case, right? We still see the most volume of people learning how to enact Scrum as Scrum Masters, learning how to develop their products as product owners. But what we saw was we were able to have a lot more classes that served in those different areas. And so that's kind of where you see that growth trend. Then you see also, I want to acknowledge it, that from 2023 to 2024, we saw a dip. Now, this is where I actually kind of want to shift our attention from the classes to the students. Because what you'll see is that you still see that 2020 dip, right? You see that dip that happened in 2020 after that, the growth of 2017, 2018, and 2019. However, what you see is that that dip in student count started a little bit earlier. Now, sometimes people ask me, so why is that? Like, why do you see that? And what it was is that we're offering more classes because they're virtual, but we're seeing lower student counts. So I remember, I think it was in 2022, we actually had to split a class. We were doing a PSPO in December and it filled up, but then we had people like fill up the waiting room. So we're just like, hey, we should split this thing. And so we split it into two classes. Both classes ended up being like 14, 16 person classes. And what we've seen is we've seen a little bit of a, as you can see in the trend there, a dip in student count. Now, I think some of this has to do with just with economic factors. I mean, we've been through some pretty hard economic times, and so it's not just training that's being affected here. We're seeing it across multiple industries. We see it in the consulting world and all that. So it doesn't surprise me that we see this, because usually when budgets start to shrink, people start to wonder if they really should be spending that money for people to go training. And also we'll talk about some of the motivations of training. But before we do that, what I wanted to do was also share some of the data from scrum.org. So the first stuff that you see on the left, that's just improving. And then courtesy of Eric Nyberg over at scrum.org, he shared with me what does the scrum.org public classes look like. And so again, what I think is interesting is that you can see in the scrum.org public classes, they didn't have a dip in 2020, which to me is absolutely amazing, because this is all of the trainers. This is all of the trainers that train scrum.org classes. I think it's beautiful and it's wonderful because I love those folks. I love those other trainers. And it made me feel good that because we started to allow, or scrum.org started to allow those virtual trainings, I think it saved a lot of our independent trainers, because if they had to weather the storm of not delivering in-person classes, I think it would have meant the end of a lot of really great folks who deliver amazing training. And then if you look at the public student count, you'll see a very similar kind of curve, because as you see, those numbers have started to kind of fade away with scrum.org as well. And again, there's economic conditions, but I also think it's that, what are the motivations? Now, one of the motivations that people have and had was certifications, right? And so these are the certifications that you can aspire to get with scrum.org. And these certifications are not based on class attendance. These certifications are based on passing an assessment. And let me just say this, those assessments, they're no joke. Those assessments are difficult. Matter of fact, one of the things that I tell my students when they come through one of my classes, I say, when you pass your assessment, because I like to give them that positive encouragement, when, not if, but when you pass this assessment, I want you to feel proud of that accomplishment, and like post your achievement on your social media, on LinkedIn. And when you do, tag me, because I'm going to give you the green clappy hands and tell you way to go, because that stuff's no joke. But here's what I want to let us know, though. Certifications should not be the goal. They shouldn't be the goal of learning. Now, I get why they might be for some people, because especially in I think kind of in the years before 2020, people many times were looking at these certifications as a way to open up new opportunities. And I absolutely think it does. But really what I'm looking for is that these certifications, what they are is, they're a reflection of knowledge gained. And then when you can take that knowledge and not just hold it back, not just have it written down or have a collection of badges on your LinkedIn feed, but when you can actually have that knowledge transform the way a team works, transform the way an organization delivers value to their customers, that's what we're after here. And as I look at some of these certifications, like this is what goes through my head. Like when I see those PSM certifications, that's for professional scrum masters. What I'm thinking of with those is, these are people that are change agents. These are people that are going to go in and start focusing on delivering value often for the sake of their customers. That's what Scrum Masters are doing. They're helping enact Scrum as it's described in the Scrum Guide. They're helping people learn how to be more effective and delivering value. Then I see our PSPO certifications. That's for our product owners. For product owners, their focus is on how to maximize the value delivered by the Scrum team. Our developers, that's where you see the PSD. This is where they're learning different techniques. And also there's a shared certification with the Applying Professional Scrum with PSM1. And then you see a lot of those advanced classes. Those advanced classes are the ones that I told you that when we started to do virtual training, that's what kind of opened up for us, is things like our professional Scrum facilitation skills, the professional Scrum with Kanban, love that one, professional Agile leadership. These are all these different ways of learning how to make an organization better, how to make a team better and more effective. And that is actually what our goal is. So with that said, let's talk about some of those learning modalities, which really just means, different types of training. So the first is in-person learning. Now, sometimes when I talk about in-person learning, people are like, oh, yeah, I don't really like it. And I get it. I get it. Why? Because that image that you see, you may already be thinking of these words, but this is death by PowerPoint. And so what does death by PowerPoint look like? It looks like exactly what I'm doing right now. See how I'm just reading the bullet points? I don't know about you, but when I have been in a training session where someone was doing this, it made me feel like I was going crazy. The reason is because I had already finished reading all the content on the slide before they got done with the second bullet point. Now you're wondering, is he going to still read all the bullet points to complete the illustration? Yes. All right. So what's the alternative? What's the alternative to death by PowerPoint? Well, for us at Improving, what we're looking to do is we're looking to make an in-person learning experience be one that is very interactive. That's what I strive for. Matter of fact, that's kind of one of the weird things about me doing one of these virtual talks is I don't see you. I don't hear you. We can't have a conversation. And that seems strange to me because in the in-person learning, I'm asking people questions. I'm checking for understanding, those kind of things. Not only that, though, is it's also an opportunity to do team building. So like if you have let's say you want to do a private training, that team building that happens, what is going on there is you're experiencing new things together and you're learning together. You're getting a shared vocabulary that creates a cohesion within a team. Also, it's an opportunity for networking. For the public classes, you'll get to meet other people who are doing and learning some of the same stuff that you are. You'll hear about their challenges. You'll be able to see how things are going at their company, and it's a shared learning experience. Also, it's not just reading slides. It's not just going through PowerPoints. We do lots of interactive activities. That's one of the things that I think makes the learning so valuable is the activities that we do together. Now, one of the things that I'll tell my students when we're doing some of those activities is we're on a very tight time frame usually because there's so many things we want to get to. So many times they're just going to get a taste. They're going to get a taste of what this activity looks like, what this facilitation technique looks like, but it's a taste that they can then reflect back on and then say, oh, it was just this. And I actually got to experience that when I did the Professional Scrum Master Advanced class. I remember seeing some of the facilitation techniques. Once I just saw them being done, I'm like, oh, that's all right. That's not too hard. The other thing that I think is absolutely essential in the kind of learning that we do is that it's interactive and that you're able to get that immediate feedback. I'm able to get feedback because if I say something that doesn't make sense, people will do this. What? And so like it's a two-way communication, and I definitely encourage that. I want for it to be a conversation that we're having together. That's why I'm always asking questions. I'm always asking people, what do they think and how do you think this is going to apply? The last thing about in-person learning is that it does provide you a way to focus. Matter of fact, that was one of the things that people were really nervous about when we started to do virtual learning is like, how are we going to maintain people's attention? And let me just tell you, that is one of the challenges of virtual learning. So with virtual learning, like, here's what can happen. What can happen is you do the exact same thing where you do virtual learning, which is still death by PowerPoint. Now, here's the deal though. if you're doing this thing right, what you're not going to do is just read a bunch of slides. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to make it an interactive thing. Just in the same way that we did this in the in-person learning, you're going to actually make it in-person like by interacting with people, by having people's cameras on so that you can have that kind of richer communication. You can see that body language. Many times I'll tell my students that I'm looking at them to see how they're reacting to things. Sometimes they're giving me that slow head nod of I'm tracking with you. Sometimes they're like, wait, what? And I'm looking for that, right? And I'm adjusting as I see those kind of things, but not if I'm just doing the death by PowerPoint, which I don't ever want to do. So what does virtual learning look like at Improving? Well, here's the deal. One of the things that we do is we like to make sure that it's not just listening to Blake and then Blake listening to you, but also that you're listening to each other, that you're having times to work as a team. This is something that we had to figure out when we started to deliver virtual training, because this is something that we do in the classroom. You're sitting down at a table and we'll have you do activities with your table. We want that same thing to happen. We want those same smaller conversations to happen. And then what's so amazing and what I just love about training is it's never the same, because what'll happen is we'll be trying to figure something out. We'll be working on a new idea, and we'll get two totally different ideas, two totally different solutions, two totally different takes on a scenario, and people are actually learning from each other, which I think is amazing. Same thing with our in-person learning, that we want to have exercises that are based on you interacting, on you learning, on you questioning how you do things, collaborating together on those ideas. Something that was really surprising to me is with virtual learning is that our nonverbal interactions are actually better than in person. Now, I know some of you just kind of said, wait a minute, is he saying virtual learning is better than in person? No, that's not what I said. But I said in one sense, it can be. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. If you look on that image back there, that's an example of our professional Scrum Master class. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, what you see is a bunch of stickies. Well, one of the things that I like to do in my classes, whether it's virtual or in person, is a thing called sticky storms. And that's where I ask people to get ideas out of their heads onto stickies, as many stickies as they want, but one idea per sticky. Now, that part is pretty easy. It's pretty similar in both places. But then what I ask them to do is put those ideas on a flip chart. And for Mural, you're doing it right there. You're doing it right then, and you're putting them out there. And then when we start to move those around looking for patterns, that's when Mural really shines. Because I've had 16 people at a flip chart, and they're kind of like, I don't want to get too close to anybody else, but there's no physical proximity limitations with the virtual world in Mural. And so it's been really neat to see how amazing some of those nonverbal interactions are. Again, with virtual learning, I think one of the keys is having that two-way communication, being able to get that live feedback, being able to question when you don't understand something. And so this is kind of the segue into the third learning modality that we're going to talk about, which is virtual self-paced learning. Now, here's the thing I'm going to let you know, that I think that there is definitely benefits for this. The self-paced learning, one of the benefits is kind of built into the name. It's self-paced, right? So if you've been listening to me and you've been going like, man, that dude talks pretty fast. Well, if you're listening on YouTube, you can always do the thing where you say, let's slow it down a little bit and let's get it to where Blake's talking a little bit slower. You can go to that 0.75. Or if you're some kind of crazy speedster and you're like, he's still not talking fast enough, you can crank it up to 1.5 or whatever. Same thing with virtual self-paced learning. You can take longer on a topic. You can do a topic shorter. It's up to you. It's your pace, right? And so I think that's an advantage of the self-paced learning. I'll also say this, from a cost standpoint, virtual self-paced learning is amazing. It is so much less expensive. And the reason it's less expensive is because you can basically do a class one time and then just sell it over and over and over and over. And so I get the financials of this. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. And then also there's that whole deal of whenever you're doing a recording, You can make it super high quality. You can, not that it always happens, but you can make it super high quality. You can make sure that the production standards are impeccable. And if you mess up, well, you can go back and try it again. It's kind of like if you're doing a studio recording. If you mess up, let's take two, let's do it again. But it's different than that live experience, right? And I think that's one of the cons. That's one of the cons of self-paced learning, is that interaction thing that I was talking about, that ability to get instant feedback. That's something that you don't get here. And I actually experienced this. I was taking a course to learn Swift, and some of the folks that may be watching are like, oh, really, Blake? You tried to learn how to code? I know. I was trying, and let me tell you, things were going great. At the beginning of the course, things were going amazing. But somewhere along the lines, we went from hello world to some complicated stuff that I was so lost. And I would go back and I'd watch the steps over and over again. I'm like, I can't figure out why my stuff doesn't work. And so because there wasn't that feedback, there wasn't that ability to me say, hey, I don't get it, I just kind of gave up. I didn't keep going. Now, this is part of what you're getting with that self-paced, right? Because it's self-paced, because you can go faster and slower, and because you're controlling how much time you spend, it's not like there's someone there with you. Now, maybe there's some different ways that people collaborate with their instructors, like, through messages, and maybe that's good. And if you're kind of keeping the context alive, then it might work for you. There's not any interactions as far as any of the classes I've taken. Maybe you've experienced differently, but the interactions that we have in our classes where we're working together, you kind of miss out on that a little bit too. And I also think it's a little bit harder to keep focused and keep engaged when you're just kind of watching the content and then doing an exercise on your own. Then you're watching more content and doing more exercise on your own. What I will say though, is this is an area where I'm really interested in what's going to happen in the future. Because I think this is an area that will change as artificial intelligence becomes more and more pervasive. It becomes better. Is that we may see AI really change the landscape of virtual self-paced learning, and I'm going to be all about it. I think it'll be really neat to see this thing happen, but it seems like we're definitely not there yet. So that's us talking about the learning modality. So let's go now and let's shift to our third learning objective, which is the career growth and competitiveness. So what I'm going to start off with is kind of what we define business agility at Improving. And it's really about change, being able to respond to change, being able to adapt to change, being able to use change for competitive advantage. That's what we want. We don't get overly focused on you must do things in a certain way. No, we bring these ideas and say, like, this is how this framework works, but understand that, like, you're going to take it and you're going to use it so that you can enable your business to be more competitive. And then I can show you our training mission. Now, this is one where I'm going to read, so nobody say, and then later on, he did it. He did Death by PowerPoint. It's just one slide, don't worry. Improving's training team builds longer and stronger relationships with professionals, making an impact at their company by inspiring and supporting them in and after they leave the classroom. So let me tell you what that looks like. So first off, the classroom, right? Like this is part of what we do. And this is what we've been talking about, is like that classroom learning. And I believe that this is still part of what we're going to see in the future, classroom learning. I don't think classroom learning is going to go away. And the reason why is, in classroom learning, this is where we set the foundation. This is where we create that shared understanding, sometimes a new vocabulary, we build that. And then once we've built that, then it allows us to go from there. It's setting that foundation so that we can build on it. Now, part of what I think is our secret sauce at Improving is we have this thing where we talk about the lab. So the classroom is going to be our content and our context. Now, when we get into the lab, this is where we start to use your context. It's our content, right? Like, so we're going to be the ones that are saying, okay, we're going to do this facilitated exercise, and we may even facilitate it. But what we're doing is we're no longer working on some fake scenario that has nothing to do with your business. Now it's actually focused on your business, right? So what does this look like? It could be that we're going to be developing a product vision. It could be that we're going to be working on a value proposition canvas, interactively trying to discover who your customers are, what pains do they feel, what gains do they desire. We do this so we're focused in on your actual business problems using some of the techniques that we found to be successful in that way, right? Then aside from the lab, we also have the field. This is where we're actually working with you. We're actually working alongside you. So now it's your context and it's also your content. So we're dealing with the challenges, right? You've learned amazing things in the classroom. You're like, yes, we want this. You've done some experiments in the lab that have gotten you some results. But now, how do we do this thing and actually make it stick? How do we make these new things that we've learned into deliberate practice? And that's what we do in the field. So as we talk about so how do we take this forward? What does this mean from the perspective of individuals? Well, I think for individuals, when you are thinking about training, the number one thing I can tell you is the thing I want you to do most is think about how you can develop skills, right? Think about how you can add to your skill sets. And when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to make yourself more valuable. And as you make yourself more valuable, what I want you to also recognize is those certifications, they're great. And again, like I told you, I love to celebrate those. It's amazing. It makes me feel so happy when I see someone have that achievement that's been through one of my classes. But really, it's just a way for them to recognize, hey, I've understood these concepts, and now I'm going to go put them to use. I'm going to go make things happen. And that's one of the requests that I make to my students too, is I'm like, will you tell me when you've done something amazing that based on what you learned, like just send me a note and let me know how things are going. I always love that. So if you're one of my students and you're watching this, do that, please. I love it. I love hearing about how things are going for you. And so that's for individuals. Now, it's going to be somewhat similar for organizations, except I'm not just focusing on getting better. I'm also focusing on how is this training going to impact the way that you deliver value to your customers? If you are not customer focused, well, good luck. Good luck, because all that we see in the marketplace is people getting better and better at being competitive, at being able to draw in customers. And if you're not focused on that, then someone is going to be. And so this is what I try to help organizations see, is by developing your people, what you're doing is you're making it so that you're more competitive. Also, this is a way that you can differentiate yourself as an organization. When you invest in your employees, then that's one of the ways that you can attract new talent and also keep the ones that you have. When you have people that feel like they're being poured into, that they're experiencing growth, then they don't look for growth outside of your company. The last one here is that all we see today is that we are seeing change happen faster and faster. As technology develops, we are all being forced into a world of continuous change. And so what this training should do is enable you to respond to change. Just like I said in that business agility definition, right? It's being able to respond to change and then sometimes even initiate change. Use change as part of your competitive advantage. So we've covered all of our objectives now. So I told you about the current state of career learning. We shared some charts with you. I kind of told you about like the motivation, right? The certifications, they're cool, but let's make sure it's backed by actual knowledge. We talked about those different learning modalities, right? We talked about the in-person, which is awesome. And I'm going to get to do an in-person class next week. And I'm so excited. It's so amazing. And virtual training, love doing that as well. And then also maybe the future of what will it look like when that virtual self-paced learning, what will it look like years ahead when we start to integrate AI into that? And then our career growth and competitiveness. How do you use training to create that competitive advantage? Well, before we end, I just want to give kind of a call out. Something that Daniel shared with you at the beginning is this is the start of a series. And so if you're watching it on YouTube, thanks for spending the 30 minutes with me. If you're watching it live, thank you for taking your lunch. And I'm going to give you some time to go actually eat lunch, so you're not having to just cram it all in right now. But what's coming up next is we've got internal training, and that's going to be with Michael Perry. I can't wait to see that one. That one's going to be amazing. I'll have to watch it on video though, because I'll be training next week. What training works and is it still worth it? A conversation with Don McGrill and Gary Pedretti. That is going to be fun. Definitely tune in for that. And then finally, I think this is more for those executives and leaders, how to apply a learning strategy for my company. And that's going to be Lisa Lueck. And so I think it's some great learning opportunities. And I just want to say thank you for being here. I hope you learned something. I hope you're excited about the future of training. I know I am. Thanks, everybody.